Well, welcome to the High Vibration Living podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this.
I'm looking forward to it too because I want us to have a little bit of fun today. I think sometimes dating conversations can be heavy, or there's definitely themes to dating conversations depending on the season. And I wanted to talk about how we can start using food to strengthen our relationships with people we love, or just to have more fun in the dating process. Is this a conversation you've had yet? Because I feel like you've covered every topic with your
I
podcast.
probably haven't had a full on conversation about this, but in my relationship, I got married over the summer and we're coming up on 4 years since we started dating. And food has been such a big part of our relationship. So I'm like so excited that we get to talk about this.
Yeah, because I think we see this and hear about this a lot more thanks to social media, is when you choose a partner, that's someone that you're going to be eating essentially 3 meals a day with, potentially the rest of your life.
Mm.
So you better make sure you like sitting across or next to the person when it comes to who you're going to enjoy your meals with. And there's so many studies out now that show that who we are with when we eat our meal affects our ability to digest our meals.
Wow, that's
That's
interesting.
what's super fascinating, right? So, like, they always say that you should never sit at the table and break bread with someone you don't like, because it's going to affect your ability to digest your food. It's going to affect your health. And so, like, what happens when we enjoy meals with someone we love? Like, how does that change how our body absorbs the nutrients and digests the food?
Well, this is such a fascinating concept because immediately I'm thinking about meals I've had with people who I don't feel like I can be my whole authentic self with. And I know that as I'm eating, not necessarily in the bites I'm taking, but throughout the entire meal experience, like I'm overthinking everything I'm saying. I'm thinking, okay, if I say this, are they going to walk away and tell this to 10 other people? Or are they going to take this the wrong way? And so I'm anxious the entire time. And I know that anxiety can affect your gut and how your body shows up. So that makes so much sense. And I've never thought about that before.
Yeah, and as women, we are so much more sensitive than men, right? So, like, we are definitely always ahead of our curve on what we're sensing in the relationship, what we're sensing in our community, what we're sensing just with different things that are going on with the world. Like, so food affects us very differently. So, we're probably pickier eaters. And I have found, since I just moved into the health space long before a lot of people were open to hearing about the things that I talk about, it was challenging dating because I was worried about how I was going to be judged for how I was ordering. Like, I just wanted real food, you know? Like, sometimes you just want, like a steak, but without, a bunch of sauces on it. Or you just want your sandwich prepared the way you like your sandwich. And I think women, you want your salad dressing on the side. And I think as women, we get nervous when we're on dates to order the food the way we would have normally ordered the food around our friends.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of work to feel comfortable when you first start dating, to just show up 1,000% authentically on your date. Like, I'm someone that like rarely drinks on a date. I have to like really be into you to actually order a drink. If I'm not even curious about you, I'm not going to order a drink. I'm not going to waste the calories or the potential hangover on you.
Yeah.
But like, that's a conversation I've never had with anyone, and I don't, not even friends. It's like, how do we get over like the fear of really showing up on a foodie date as our authentic self, and like continuing being comfortable with the boundaries that we know that work for our body and our health?
Totally. It's such a great question. I know I have dating coaching clients who they're afraid to go on a dinner date. They want to stick to like walking dates or coffee, tea, ice cream. But that concept of like sitting across the table from somebody, ordering a meal and eating it in front of somebody is terrifying to them. I also have friends and I've talked to singles who they're vegan or they're gluten free or they're dairy free, and they're afraid to be judged for that, where they question,
Yes.
should I be putting this in my profile so people can like prejudge me and know this about me going into it, so that only the people who match with me already know? Or am I like writing myself off of so many people's lists by doing that? Should I not mention it? But then when do I bring it up? What if I'm gluten free and they ask me to go to a pizza place for our first date that I know doesn't have gluten free options? Then it's already off to a rocky start. So it's such a huge conversation. And it's a conversation that is missing from the dating space.
Do you think it comes back to us as women feeling like we're difficult and we don't want to be difficult. We want to be more easygoing in dating? Does it come back to all the men who have told us that we are just too much? Like, what do you think the core fear is? Is it just rejection?
Yeah, I think it all stems from rejection. I think exactly what you said. Like we don't want to be too difficult. We don't want to be too much. I mean, I remember a friend of mine who is gluten-free and dairy-free. Someone had messaged her on Hinge, asked her out, and in deciding a place, she told them her dietary restrictions. And he said, "Oh, like I'm not going to waste either of our times. Like I'm not interested." And he unmatched her. And I posted a TikTok just walking down the street saying like good morning to everyone except for the guy who like unmatched my friend because she told him about her dietary restrictions. This video went so viral, millions of views, tens of thousands of comments from people saying I don't blame him. It was crazy. And then there were all of these people in the comments also saying like this comment section is making me never want to put myself out there again. It was so
Yeah,
sad.
I completely understand. What's so interesting is those comments from the men or the people that are saying, I completely understand how I used to explain the restrictions I had, which are like completely normal now. Like when I talk
Mhm.
about my food restrictions, like it's basically like everybody.
Right.
But 10, 15 years ago, I was the outlier. And I would always try to explain like it doesn't affect you. The food's
No.
going into my body. I'm the one that's going to feel a certain way within a few hours, 24 hours, 48, 72. It's not going to affect you. The benefit is you get a woman who wakes up tomorrow looking exactly like she looked today, instead of one who's going to wake up tomorrow, looking like looking puffy and having an attitude and being irritable and having a stomach ache and wanting to push you away because I simply don't feel good. The benefit to you allowing me to order what works for my body, like it has nothing to do with you.
No, and my pushback to anyone who thinks that it is a deal breaker or a red flag about somebody is, well, what if you met somebody, you dated them, you fell in love with them, and then they had a new health issue come up, and suddenly they couldn't eat gluten, they couldn't eat dairy, they couldn't eat XYZ thing. You're not just going to break up with them because of that. You deal with it. It's
Yeah,
not that hard.
yeah. There's always ebbs and flows in life and every relationship, and the food allergy overall doesn't have to be forever. There's so many food allergies that you can heal. You just have to be mindful of the restaurants you go to, and there's always modifications that need to be made. What's the advice that you give some of your clients?
In terms of, so backing up, the ones who are afraid to go out on dinner dates, what I say to them is, first of all, practice. Like most of these people are also nervous to even like go out to dinner with friends in general. They're just for some reason like not comfortable eating around other people. And I do push them to get practice. It's an amazing thing. Being able to go out and share a meal with somebody at a restaurant is a wonderful part of life that they should get to enjoy, but it does take those baby steps. A great way to, mentally prepare yourself is look at the menu beforehand. If you have certain dietary restrictions, you're not sure if they can accommodate, call the restaurant and ask. Pick out exactly what you're going to order so you can walk in confident. You're not going to, see the menu and then panic and not know what to get. You can just go in exactly prepared for what you're going to do when that menu comes. You're going to know what you're going to order. You're going to know that you're going to be okay with it. You could also go to that restaurant before, order the thing before, and practice going through the motions in that place, and then go the next night on your date. For the people who are afraid that they're going to be rejected because of their dietary restriction, I mean, the first and foremost, the type of person that's going to reject you for that is not the type of person you want to be with, point blank. And if somebody is so worried about disclosing it after the fact that they think they're going to get unmatched, or the person's not going to want to continue the date with them or whatever, then to those people, I would suggest that they put it on their profile so that they know, okay, this person knows and they're okay with it. If somebody suggests a date place that doesn't work for you, like a dinner restaurant that can't accommodate you, then you owe it to yourself to speak up and say, actually, like, there are certain foods I can and can't eat. Like, I've been really dying to try this place instead, and it works for me. Is that okay? And again, if they're not down for that, that's not the type of person you want to be with. And so it's remembering you deserve to be with somebody who's going to accept you and appreciate you and treat you the way you want to be treated. And anyone who's not going to give you that isn't worth your time.
And I find that when you explain your food restrictions, they totally understand. So when I explain why I really just don't eat bread. I don't eat gluten. I don't eat pasta like most people within the United States. I'm always open to try a good sourdough every now and then and see how my body reacts. But overall, I just avoid it because I tend to have the same experience every time. And then they ask, what's the experience? What are the issues? I explain what it is. I explain how many days it lasts for. And then they totally get it. And then they kind of have an aha moment like, that kind of happens to me too. When I eat
Right.
that stuff, maybe I should try to stay away for it for a few days and see what happens. And then it starts a whole new conversation with them. They're like, have you ever done an elimination diet? Oh, are you into this? Have you tried this? When you can get past just the restrictions, you may be a difficult woman to deal with, to why you have the restrictions. I feel like it actually becomes a conversation starter more about how we live and our lives, and it can be a good thing.
Absolutely. I think that's such a great point. And that goes for anything. We all have something that we're a little nervous to open up about. We're not sure if someone's going to accept us for it. But if we can explain, the reasons behind it and how it impacts us and why we make the choices that we make, that's an amazing way to connect with somebody. And that's what dating is all about. It's about connecting. And all the while this is the thing that you might be a little nervous to bring up on a date, that person sitting across from you also has something that is unique to them that they might be nervous or self-conscious about or have to explain.
So, I have a silly question to ask you. I've dated for a long time, and there have been times where I've gone on dinner dates, lunch dates, what have you, where, it's normal. The guy sits across from you, you enjoy a meal, you connect. And sometimes you meet those guys that want to sit next to you on the date. Have you experienced that? Have you had clients that have brought that up? And how do other women feel about it? Because sometimes it's a yes, sometimes it's a no. I find it's only a yes if I'm really into the guy, but mostly if it's just the first or second or third date, like, please stay across from me.
Yeah. So I know there's actually research about this that shows that sitting next to each other is a better way to connect. Similarly to, if you're walking with somebody or in the car with somebody, like you could end up having deeper conversations. There's less pressure on the eye contact. You're able to think more deeply. You're able to look around and point out different things or people watch together and connect about that place that you passed. Or do you see like that couple over there? Like, I wonder, like, what date do you think they're on? Like, there are ways to add like these third objects in when you both have the same view instead of looking directly at each other. And it can lead to deeper conversations, more vulnerability. That said, it can be super off putting and feel super unnatural because we're not used to it.
Yeah. I think it also depends on the setting. Like, one, it depends if you're sliding into like a corner booth versus if you're sitting at a bar versus a four top. Like, I guess it really depends on the seating situation and how it ultimately feels. And I think really how into the person you're going on a date with, whether you're going on a date with them because you're truly interested or if you're just going through the motion.
Right. And I think it's totally okay. It's equally your date as it is their date. So let's say like you slide into a booth and you're expecting them to sit across from you and they slide in next to you. You can say like I really want to like look at you when I talk. I feel like that's more fun than sitting next to each other. Like you can push back and say, "Okay, here's what you wanted, but here's actually where I feel more comfortable."
Wow, that's such a good line. It's equally my date as it is their date. I don't know why I haven't ever thought of it that way. I think, yeah, I've just always given up control to them.
Why do you think
And
that is?
because I'm super old fashioned. And I think for me and where I am in my life, I have to be in control of everything every day, right? And I think most women, like the moment you graduate from college, like you're in control of your life. Like you have to make so many decisions every day. And we all get exhausted from having to make so many decisions every day. So I look forward to a moment where a man can lead. And so I've always surrendered the dating process to the man leading. And that's always interesting to watch, just seeing the man who can lead and the man who can't make a decision.
Yeah. Listen, I would be a horrible man in that case because I am the worst at making decisions. I actually think it holds me back in my daily life. But I do see your point to that. I'm curious, do you think there's a world in which you would enjoy dates more if you took a little more control of them?
I just had that experience where all of our best dates were the ones that I planned, and that was sad and disappointing. And so that's not the relationship that I want. I'm okay with doing it 50-50, right? When I think about like the ideal long-term relationship, of course I would want to be with somebody who would be open to me planning as many of our activities and our outings and our dates, whether at home or beyond. But I'm old fashioned. I like to be courted. Like,
Yeah.
I want to see what the man wants to experience with me. And that's at my age how I think about dating is like, what's the experience you want to share with me? What's the experience you want to have with me? And, is it just a coffee shop? Is it a walk through the park? Is it a beach walk? Is it a hike? Is it a new restaurant? Is it a farmer's market? Like, what's the experience you want to share with me? So I think of it more as that way.
That makes sense. I think a lot of women do feel that way too. They want to be, like you said, courted. They want to be shown that they can be taken care of. I think what you mentioned about like 50-50, that it might take a few dates to get there where you start contributing, but that is the unlock. I think it's so important to do that. I mean, I know women who they never, ever, 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 ever want to plan anything, want to take charge. They just want to be courted the entire way through. But that's not realistic in terms of like how life works. Like it's like I said, like it's equally your date as it is their date. It's also
Yep.
your relationship and your life. And you should get a say in the things that you do, the people you do them with, the places you go, the food that you eat. But I see both sides of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Bless those women that have been courted all the way through. Never has happened to me, hope springs eternal. But I don't mind planning some of the dates. Like, it's fun. I like being able to suggest things that I want us to do together. And I always hope that I'm with a person that's open to it, right? They have to be sharing some of my core values. What are some of the dating myths that some of your clients are coming to right now that you're having to burst for them?
Oh my God. If he wanted to, he would. This is the hill I will die on where if he wanted to, he might. How many times have you wanted to, but you didn't? Maybe he wants to, but he doesn't know how. Maybe he wants to, but he's afraid to because he's been hurt in the past. Maybe he would, but he doesn't know that you want him to. Phrases like, if he wanted to, he would are so black and white. That's not real life. And there are so many things that come up, so many situations that we have to work through in our own heads. And I think that, just saying like, oh, well, he hasn't asked me out yet. If he wanted to, he would. Oh, well, we've been going on dates, but he hasn't asked me to be exclusive. If he wanted to, he would. Oh, well, he hasn't texted me yet today. If he wanted to, he would. Like, maybe he's busy. Maybe there is something really heavy going on in his life right now that's, preventing him from giving his all. That doesn't mean he doesn't want to. That doesn't mean he's not planning to, but maybe he can't in this very moment. Maybe he has no idea that you really need to hear from him every day in between dates in the early stages. Otherwise, you think that he's ghosting you. He might not know that. So that's one of the biggest concepts out there that really blew up on social media that I have worked very hard with some people to reverse.
So, what's the mindset that we need to shift to? Is that we're all just doing the best we can? At what point do we realize that the lack of action from the person we're dating means that it's time for us to step away?
I think the first part is telling them what you want. You have to voice what you're looking for because we're not mind readers. Why are we expecting the person that we're dating to be able to read our mind? They can't. So if you voice what you need, if you know what you need and you ask for it and they can't show up for you in that way, like if you tell somebody like, "Hey, I feel like our dates are going really well and then, I don't hear from you for a few days in between them, I start to think that means you're not interested anymore. I really value not necessarily constant, but I value more communication between dates. And when I don't get that from you, it makes me feel anxious. If there's any way we could talk more between dates, like I would really appreciate that." That's not asking for that much. And if you can voice that and they are able to show up for you and start texting you more, great. If you voice that and nothing changes, then maybe this isn't your person.
Got it. That's a great advice. Let's talk about some like food focus first date ideas. For the girl who is going to lead, or, for the girl who's gotten to a point in the relationship where they feel like they can make suggestions, or for the guy that's tuning into this. What are food focused first, second, third dates that you love or suggest to clients?
First dates are a little bit harder because you're just getting to know each other. So, I mean, that I think a great idea is to meet at maybe a wine bar or somewhere where there's an option to get a drink. There's also an option to, get an appetizer, something small. You're not committing to a full dinner yet. You're just ordering like a little app or two to share while you talk a bit. And if you're both having a great time, okay, you know what? Let's stay for dinner. Let's order more and commit to spending more time with each other. I know a lot of people, especially in their 20s, get turned off when somebody asks them for dinner on a first date. They feel like that's way too much of a commitment. They don't know the person yet. They don't know that they want to spend 2 hours with them. So
Yeah.
having a little bit less of like more of a non-committal first date situation is a great idea where you get something small to start. And then if you're having a good time, you can suggest, or they will suggest, like, oh, do you want to order more and have dinner? And if you're not interested, you can say, this has been great. Like, I have a big meeting tomorrow morning. I got to get home to prep for it, but thank you. And that way, you tried, you came, you had a little bit of food, and you're able to cut it off. I think a great date idea is to meet at a grocery store or a farmer's market
Yeah.
and go food shopping together and go back to one of your apartments or houses and cook that meal together. I did that on a few, probably like second and third dates, and I had such a fun time doing it. I think going to a grocery store with somebody can be really playful and just takes you both out of the like, let's interview each other and get to know each other with these basic dating questions, like that we're so exhausted from. But to be able to like walk through the aisles of a grocery store with somebody, like maybe they'll point out that snack that they had when they were a kid, or maybe you'll argue over, is it worth it to buy organic carrots or are normal carrots okay? There's just so much more you can talk about that wouldn't
Yeah.
come up sitting across the table at a restaurant from each other. So I love dates like that. I think a great thing to do as the dates progress. My husband and I did this when we first started dating. We loved The Bachelor,
Hmm.
and we would talk about the show The Bachelor and Bachelorette on some of our early dates. And so we decided, like, let's plan date card days for each other. So for anyone who hasn't seen the show, when somebody's getting chosen to go on a date, they get an envelope with a card in it, and it says like some kind of clue about what they're going to do or where they're going to go. And so I think on our sixth and seventh date, we each wrote a date card for each other and planned out a date, including like a lunch and or a dinner. And so we each got to choose and like surprise each other on where we were going to take each other. And food was a huge part of it. And it was such a fun time. And to this day, we still do these date card days.
That is so cute. I was going to ask you what some of the dates were that really stood out to you when you guys first started dating. Like,
Yeah, this is a great question. So our third date was a really big like game changer date for me. Prior to this, I wasn't really sure. Like I definitely wasn't all in on him until this third date. I wasn't really sure. Like I knew we had a connection, but I didn't necessarily see it turning into a relationship. And our third date was actually the day after I got my first COVID vaccine, and I felt so sick. I like couldn't put my jacket on. I couldn't cut my food for myself. Like he had to do these things for me. And we went to this amazing rooftop restaurant for brunch, and we both ordered way too much. We were so full. We like laughed a lot about it, and we were having such a great time that we decided to continue the date. And we went for a long walk, and we ended up going to this bar in our old neighborhood. We learned that for 2 years we lived on opposite corners of the same street corner. And we didn't know each other. And so we both had the same local bar. And so we went to the local bar. We got a drink that we used to individually get. And then we ended up, I still didn't feel well all the while. And at the end of the day, or at the end of the date, I was like, I'm going to go to my apartment and watch One Tree Hill for 4 hours. Like, you're welcome to join me if you want. And he ended up coming over. I think we ended up like also ordering in pizza because we needed dinner at that point. But I changed into sweatpants, put my hair up, took my makeup off. We laid on the couch for 4 hours watching this show. And that was a huge sign for me that on a day where I felt so sick and horrible, I could have a really fun time with this person and also feel super comfortable sitting on my couch in my natural habitat, not trying to impress him, watching a show. And that was a really like big turning point for us. And I think from there, everything was in that direction.
How did you guys meet?
Hinge.
And how are you suggesting to your clients? And how are you hearing other people right now are meeting?
I think for the most part, people still are meeting on dating apps, though
Mhm.
many people are very burnt out from them and want to meet people in real life. There are definitely a lot more singles events that people are able to go to now, whether it's speed dating or a singles run club. There are so many ways to meet people in person. That doesn't mean it's easy still. At least for me, I've been to about 20 weddings in the last 2 years. I'd say the majority of them were from dating apps. And if not dating apps, then they met at work.
People are still going into the office. Good for them.
Yeah.
I have to say a part of me misses that, misses going into the office, misses getting dressed every day, miss hearing what, like how other people are spending their days, their weekends, their
Yeah.
lives. There's so much value to that. And it's interesting because I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a chef. My office is usually people's homes and people's kitchens, but I still have these work from home days, the days that I film my podcast, that I work on my spice business. And I tried going into WeWork because I thought, let me just like meet people. Like, let me find out like what other entrepreneurs are doing. And it's funny when I went into those places and I tried multiple WeWork locations in Orange County, like nobody wanted to talk. I mean, people wanted to get their jobs done. I completely
Yeah.
understand.
It's
And
not
I
the
know,
same.
yeah, it's not the same.
Yeah. It's tough. I totally get that too. There are days where I miss like that office camaraderie. And I know like part of the reason so many companies are pushing for that, for people to go back to the office, is because it's not about them being in the office. It's about them being with each other. Like the most creative ideas come from when a group of employees are by the water cooler just chatting instead of like being around a conference table or on Zoom. So I definitely do miss that aspect of it as well. I just thought of another early date that involves food, so I need to share it.
Yes.
But on my Hinge profile, I had a prompt about the prompt said, I won't shut up about. And I took this as an opportunity to list a few things that, if you had asked any of my friends, like, what are 4 things that make Ilana Ilana? These are the things they would have said. It was my dog Zoe, the Jonas Brothers, Sugarfish, and whatever song I'm listening to on repeat right now. And Sugarfish was my favorite restaurant, favorite sushi place. And I found out on our first date that Jake had never had Sugarfish before. And so we ended up doing our second date. Backing up, when we met, it was February of 2021. It was only outdoor dining and it was 20 degrees out. So our first date was like 20 degrees outside at a restaurant. So we decided to have him come over to my apartment for the second date because we didn't want to be outside in 20 degrees again. And so we decided we would order in Sugarfish so he could try it. And it was actually really sweet. We were talking about it before and he was like, what do you usually order? I'm like, oh, like you have to get like, it's called the Trust Me. Like that's just what everyone gets. Like that's what we have to order. Like I'll place the order when you get here. Don't worry about it. And he ended up he didn't want me to pay for it. So he placed the order and the food actually got there like right before he got there. And so I thought I was opening the door for him and it was the food. And I was like, oh my God. And like he had the foresight to like go out of his way, like kind of trick me into telling him what we were going to order and order it for me so that
Yeah.
I didn't have to order it and pay, which was
What a
really sweet.
gentleman. That's a
Yeah,
great date. Like,
it was.
that is a lovely, lovely date. Leaves such a great impression, makes you feel so special. And then you get to have fun with them over food that you really enjoy and that you get to
Exactly.
share with him.
Yeah, and we've probably been to Sugarfish now like 30 times together. So it was great to see that like my favorite thing he also loved.
Yeah. I love the prompt that you use. Is there any other like fun foodie puns or foodie prompts that we can put in our Hinge profile if that's something that like we know we're really into?
I wouldn't say there's like one general prompt that you can give an answer about food with, but I actually encourage everyone to have at least one thing about food or a drink in their profile because that is the best way to lead to getting on the date. People often get stuck on how do I transition from chatting in the app to getting on a date. Well, if somebody said that they are on the hunt to find the best ramen in San Diego, then a great way to ask them on a date is say, "Oh my God, have you tried this ramen place? It's my favorite. We have to go together. When are you free next week?" Same thing with, like somebody talking about they're obsessed with espresso martinis. Like, oh, like, let's go to this place. I heard they have great espresso martinis. It's
Yeah.
such an easy way to get on the date if you have something about one of your favorite foods in your profile.
Years ago, I dated a guy simply because he knew the best places for espresso martinis. And although like it ended up not working out with him, like because I just couldn't fall in love with him. But he was such a great guy. He was so good at finding just great bars to go to, the specialty drink. Yeah, just the cocktail expert that I will
That's awesome.
always admire him and have nothing but like wonderful things to say. And so that kind of gets back to like the joy of dating.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in my early 20s, it's like all my memories of dating in my early 20s is actually all positive because there were just wonderful experiences. I went on the dates because I liked the person ultimately just as friends, but they did such a great job of curating the dates that they were just wonderful experiences. And I am trying to get more back to just dating for the joy of meeting people and having experiences. Are you ever talking with clients or dating coaches about that point of view of dating?
Yeah, all the time. I always try and encourage people to, take the pressure off of the date. Like the
Yeah.
goal of a first date or whatever number date isn't to get the second date or the following consecutive date. The goal is to have a good time and learn something. And maybe you're learning something about that other person. Maybe you're learning something about yourself or what you do or don't want in a partner. Maybe you're learning about a new food that you like. Maybe the date sucks, but you tried this awesome, I don't know, like tuna
No.
tartare, and now it's your favorite tuna tartare in the city or wherever you live. Like that's a win. There are so many micro wins every step of the way in dating. And so it's so much better to focus on getting those wins and having a good time and also getting playful, getting fun. I mean, I just thought of this as we were talking about like the profiles and the date ideas. There was a guy I went on a few dates with where I think in his profile, he had something about like trying to find the best burger in New York City. And for one of our early dates, I actually think I pitched this. We went on a burger crawl and we picked 3 restaurants in like the West Village and we went to each and split a burger and a drink at each of them.
Yeah.
And it was so fun to do that. That was such a cool experience. That's not like one of my favorite memories of my 20s in New York, but like I do think of that, when I'm like trying a new great burger, or I now will pitch to friends like, oh, let's go on a pizza crawl and stop at a few
Yeah.
different places in a neighborhood. Like there are so many ways to have fun with dating. It shouldn't all be about, do we make it into a relationship, because you're most likely not going to. It's way, way, way more likely that you and this person are not compatible as partners. But that doesn't mean that you can't have a good time, learn something, eat good food.
I completely agree. I wanted to jump back to something we were talking about working in an office. People get to go to office Christmas parties or office holiday parties in the coming weeks, which I'm actually finally at the point where I'm super envious of.
Me too.
Yeah, so we have similar situations. I got laid off from my job, and then that's when I went to culinary school and started a whole new career path. And like, amazing things happen when you get laid off from your job. You have to pivot. My company laid me off a week before the holiday party that I planned.
No.
Oh yeah. So I was the HR manager. I planned the holiday party. They laid me off the week before and then asked if I wanted to come because they needed someone to run the holiday party.
Stop it.
So I knew they wanted me.
That is pure evil.
Yeah. It was a company run by 3 men who didn't get it. So I knew they were only asking me to come so I would end up running the party for them and without them having to pay me. But also I didn't want to go because I obviously was like embarrassed that I got laid off. Like, why do I want to be around 100 of my coworkers and constantly hear like, we're going to miss you all night long. But when I look back fondly on holiday parties, it's such a fun time to get dressed up, Wear a nice outfit, go out and have a drink or a fun meal, meet new people. Do you have any advice to those lucky people? They don't even know how lucky they are that are going to get to go to their holiday party in the coming weeks.
Oh my God, what a question. And I'm right there with you. I keep for like the last 6 months, I've been like begging my husband, I'm like, is your company having a holiday party? I want to come.
I
I'd
know.
say really try and make the most of it. And by making the most of it, I don't mean like have as many drinks as you can because they're free, eat all the food that you can because they're free. I mean, like really try and connect.
Hmm.
I feel like so many amazing friendships come from work,
Yeah.
and the fact that you get to, now spend time with these people outside of work in a celebratory environment, talk to people you may not have had that many conversations with before. You never know who in your office, especially if you work for a bigger company, who you could really connect with on a deeper level and get to know better. And who knows, like maybe you and some random person hit it off and over your shared love for mini hot dogs, and you end up, grabbing lunch with them after the holidays, and suddenly you have a new great friend at work. I think really like don't just stick to like the few people on your like small immediate team that you spend most of your time with. Really use it as an opportunity to branch out and meet more people.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. If I could go back in time, I would walk up to all the people in the office that I didn't know, but I've seen all the time and just introduce myself, explain how I see them all the time, but we've never officially met. And then
Yes.
I would just go up to everyone who I didn't know, whose faces I didn't recognize, and just introduce myself, say how I haven't seen them in the office, what department do they work in, what do they do? I'm so curious. I would just like pep myself up to just go and meet as many people as possible because you already have a shared connection, which is your
Yeah.
job.
And who knows, maybe there's somebody who's standing alone and maybe and you've never seen them before. Maybe they just joined the company and they were super nervous to come to this holiday party like on their second week of work without knowing anyone. And you going up to them could make their night. And maybe you guys have so much in common, or maybe there's something that they can learn from you about working there. You can learn from them based on where they were before. There's so many opportunities to just create human connection at these events while also having a ton of fun. Like you said, dressing up, like having a
Yeah.
night out. It's so fun.
Yeah, and you never know where the night can lead you. So I always suggest like going to your holiday party, like only having one or two drinks max, and then, potentially making plans to meet up with some friends afterwards because,
Yeah,
why not? And then that usually allows you to be more confident and invite the people that you meet to join you.
definitely. And yes, one or two drinks max is key. Like double click on that, emphasize a million exclamation points. The last thing you want is to overdo it and wake up maybe not remembering an entire conversation you had with somebody, questioning, did I embarrass myself in front of XYZ person who's a few levels above me? Like, you really want to remember at the end of the day, this is still a work environment, and the way you show up at this party does reflect who you are.
Yeah. Any new interesting good advice you've been getting recently from the guests on your podcast or dating experts you've talked to about dating during the holiday season?
Dating during the holiday season specifically, I think there's so much pressure on those who are single during the holiday season to still have an amazing time and to, not be upset that they're single for the holidays. And I think some of it stems from, we go home for the holidays and maybe we have relatives saying, like, oh, when are you going to bring someone home? Like, when are you going to make me grandchildren? Like, why are you still single? And those questions, even just knowing that, Aunt Susan might ask them over Christmas dinner, can cause so much stress all month long. I think it's important to remember all of the other things that you have going for you. And not just for when you go home, but for the entire holiday season. I remember going into New Year's thinking, well, if someone doesn't kiss me tonight, like the night's a fail. Like if I don't get a New Year's midnight kiss from a literal stranger who at 8 o'clock I have not met
It's
yet,
actually
like
gross.
the night's a fail. And that was such a wild mindset for me to have when I was going out with my best friends in New York City. I had so much going for me and the recipe to have an amazing night, but I put all this emphasis and pressure on this one little meaningless thing happening. So I think with all of this, it's so important to really hype yourself up and remember, oh my God, I have this awesome job that 3 years ago I would have dreamed of, or I would not have believed you if you told me that I had this. Or wow, I just moved into this new apartment. I didn't think I'd be able to afford it. I'm really creating the life for myself that I want. Or, I got this dress that I'm so excited to wear. I feel so confident in it. Those are the things to focus on. There's so much positive in your life and positivity that gets buried under the negativity and the anxious thoughts. But the holiday season is about celebration. You should celebrate yourself, celebrate how far you've come. Even if you had a rough year, you survived, you made it through. There's so much that you can be proud of yourself for. And I think really taking the time to, be grateful and be proud of yourself will go such a long way.
If people are waiting till the new year to kind of focus on dating, are there any particular apps that you recommend people should get on come January?
It's so like person dependent and location dependent. I think more important than the app that you get on is the profile that you're creating. Really take time to make sure that your profile represents who you are. Make sure you have photos that tell stories about the things you're passionate about. If you love to cook, make sure you have a photo of you in the kitchen cooking or serving some amazing meal. If you love to surf, make sure you have a photo showing that. There's so much personality we can put into our profiles to allow other people to get a little insight into who we are. And so many people, when they're downloading an app for a new app or getting back on an app, they just rush through the profile stage because they want to jump ahead to swiping. But the key to being successful on dating apps is really creating a strong profile. And you can ask your friends, like, hey, does this profile represent me? Like, when you read my profile, does it actually like speak to you about who I am?
Yes.
And I guarantee they're most likely going to say no. And then you guys can sit there and work on it together.
Yes, I agree. I actually really like it when I can hand my phone to a friend and have them look over and give me their honest feedback, because I also just think that's helpful throughout different times in life. Just to hear from other people, what do you think I'm good at? Where do you think I excel? What do you think my weaknesses are? Like, that's a great way just to get a life tune up.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
And then my final question for you, I was curious, like, where do you turn to keep learning about love, relationships, like how to show up for yourself, how to show up in your marriage? Where do you like to get love and dating advice from?
I don't want this to come off as like a pitching myself. Like I'm not, it's truly in the conversations I have
Yeah.
with people like you, with people on my podcast. Like that is where I learn the most about human connection, about relationships, about dating experiences. I learn so much from my listeners and from the experts I talk to on my podcast and my listeners who come on my podcast. And so I feel really fortunate that I get to have those conversations because not many people are in a position where they get to have really deep conversations about all the shit somebody's been through in their life and how it's impacted their dating life, their relationships, their relationship with themselves. And so I really like every week I'm constantly learning. And I think the biggest lesson of all is everyone has something. Like we've all struggled in different ways, and it could be so easy to look at somebody on social media or in your extended social circle and think, wow, like they have it all. They have the life I want. They're living my dream. I promise you, everything is not as it seems. There's something that they're struggling with too. So just remember, like, we're all humans doing our best and nobody's life is perfect.
It's a good reminder. Is there a particular guest or two that you've had on recently whose conversation was really deep for you, really helpful? You really learned a lot and you suggest that we tune into?
Oh my God, I don't know how to choose. Ugh, I really can't pick. Like, I feel like all my episodes are my babies. So I would just say, like, scroll through and see what jumps out to you and like what would resonate with you the most.
Okay. And then where can people find your podcast? Where do you suggest people follow you so they can keep listening and learning from you?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. This was such a fun conversation. You can listen to Seeing Other People wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow along on Seeing Other People on Instagram. That's really where the community lives. And you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Ilana Dunn.
Perfect. And then can you leave our listeners with maybe like one last like love or relationship tip that they can consider adding into their life?
If you don't ask, you don't get. in every single facet of your life. Like I said before, like nobody's a mind reader.
Yeah.
And I think every single life changing or quote unquote like dream come true thing that's happened to me in my life, it's because I wanted it and I asked for it. And I got that advice from my mom when I was maybe around 14, and it has absolutely changed my life over and
I've been
over.
hearing that message a lot recently. So I think that's a great message for all of us moving into the new year too. I mean, definitely if you're someone that gets to write out a Santa list, like
Yes,
don't ask Santa, he can't bring it to you. Uh,
correct.
yeah, for those lucky people who have elves in their lives. But that's just great advice. Even that when we put together our goals or when we're in relationships, yeah, we have to open our mouth to get what we
Yeah,
want.
me too.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and chatting today. And I hope this leads to a lot of delicious relationships for people.
Me too. I have a feeling it will.